Can Trump be seen as a reliable narrator? The sort of conversations that we're having here are, well, Trump. Can Trump be seen as a reliable narrator? The sort of conversations that we're having here are, well, Trump is now moving. He's now on the side of Zelensky, and he's moved away from feeling that Putin is some sort of deity that he must have a special relationship with. Do you think any of that talk has weight to it, or can he shift?
So it just so happens about 10 days ago, I was in Ukraine, and I was in a room full of Ukrainian journalists and editors. It was a kind of conference. And I asked, is there anybody in this room who thinks that there's going to be a ceasefire soon? And nobody raised their hands. The Russians have not talked about a ceasefire. That Putin has never said he wants a ceasefire. The Russians are not acting like they want to stop the war. They haven't dropped their war aims, which continue to be the occupation and destruction of Ukraine. And so it's almost like there's one conversation happening in Washington and in the ether and among people, journalists who are writing about it. You know, there's some kind of thing happening and negotiations going, but on the ground, actually nothing has changed. And nobody who really follows the conflict and who understands what Putin is doing believes it will change. So it's a very weird thing where Trump has actually successfully, I think, created this alternative reality where there are peace talks and negotiations that don't actually exist. And then on the ground, there's nothing there. You know, I mean, the other thing I think that's really hard to understand and accept, aside from the fact that he's seeking to destroy the American government administration, is that Trump doesn't have a strategy. So he doesn't think strategically or geopolitically. He doesn't think, well, if I let Ukraine be defeated by Russia, then that will have an impact on how China sees Taiwan. I mean, that's not how he thinks. He thinks very much in the present. So every conversation that he has to win. So if he's in the room with the president of South Africa or the president of Ukraine, he has to emerge from that conversation as the victor. And he doesn't think about the further implications of that. So if he shows fake pictures to the president of South Africa that show a white genocide that didn't happen, that, of course, has implications, and it has implications for how America is perceived in Africa and how America's for future relations with South Africa. But he doesn't care about any of that. His interest is in winning the moment and in creating chaos that he can then use to manipulate people for his own political and maybe financial benefit. And it's really hard to get people to understand that that's what the U.S. president is doing, that he doesn't have a deep strategy. I mean, it may be that people are right, that he'll be frustrated because Putin, who he imagines is his friend, keeps bombing Ukraine, even though he told him not to. I mean, maybe he'll, in a burst of anger, say, right, let's have sanctions on Russia, maybe, or more sanctions on Russia, maybe. But he won't do that as part of a concerted strategy to end the war.